Hey guys, this is not the video I'd planned on making this week. Sometimes real life gets in the way of our hobbies, so I figured this was a good opportunity to bring out a Windows 3.1 NT system. We'll do some classic networking, and I'll talk a little bit about the operating system. Now, this version of Windows NT was released in 1993. As you can see, it has the familiar Windows 3.1 interface. We've got Program Manager, and everything you would expect. On top of that, this OS can actually run standard Windows applications, that is 16-bit applications, but it is actually a true 32-bit operating system. There's a little bit of protection for 16-bit applications. In standard Windows, when an application crashed, it would typically take down the entire system, you'd get a blue screen of death, and you'd have to reboot. But with NT, a single errant application typically didn't take down the entire server. So let's pop into Control Panel, we'll add a network card, and configure some networking. Now I have an ISA network card. Specifically, it's an NE2000 clone, set to IRQ5, and address 300 hex. Oh, and we need to add the TCP/IP protocol as well. It's hard to believe nowadays, but back in 1993, in Windows, TCP/IP was not installed by default. Oh, and while we're here, I'm going to install the FTP server. Now, this version of Windows came on 24 1.44 meg floppies. Compare that to Windows for Workgroups. That was only 8 floppies. So this was a massive installation. I'm just going to spend some time swapping floppies here. And of course, we have to put in some networking settings. We need a default gateway to reach the outside world. In my case, that's a 192.168.2.1. And we'll also need an IP address for the server. That's a 192.168.2.27. Oh, and the host name is Emily, by the way. And we need to specify a DNS server. In my case, the DNS server is actually the same as the default gateway. And of course, being Windows, we need to reboot to apply those settings. So let's pull up a command prompt and verify connectivity. Good, I can ping the network card. I can ping the default gateway. And yep, I can ping Google. Now, just as a side note, that's not really a DOS prompt. In Windows NT, there's no true DOS environment. Previous versions of Windows were basically just a graphical environment that sat on top of DOS. That's not the case with Windows NT. So as I mentioned earlier, I installed the FTP server. Let's pop into Users and enable the guest account so I can log in as guest. Now, this is all behind a firewall, and I'm really only doing this as a proof of concept, as I'm not paying any attention to security whatsoever. I'm going to share the temp directory from this server as well. Okay, and let's pop over to my Windows 7 system. Like all modern versions of Windows, 7 is based on NT. So in a way, we're networking from one NT server to another. Okay, so if I pull up the command prompt and FTP over to that IP address, let's log in as guest. And there we go, I've got a file listing. Now, if I wanted to, from here, I could transfer files. But let's pull up that network share, and I'm going to mount that as my Z drive. I can see Emily, and I can see that temp directory. So let's grab a small file and copy that over. Now, it doesn't copy very quickly, but we do absolutely have connectivity between these two systems. And going back over to Emily, I can see that file in the temp directory. That looks good. So for 1993, this was a pretty amazing system. You've got a true 32-bit environment with the ability to run 16-bit applications, some degree of user privilege separation, and again, some degree of protection between 16-bit applications and the operating system. But that all came with a cost. According to Microsoft, you could run Windows NT 3.1 on a 25 MHz 386 with 12 megs of memory. Realistically, I'm running this on a 486 DX33 with 16 megs, and that's the absolute bare minimum that I would recommend for the operating system. This computer would have been pretty high-end, pretty expensive back in '93. Now, the Pentium did come out in 1993 as well, but it was quite some time before they were really commercially available. Even if you did have enough horsepower to run this operating system in 1993, you would have found that your 16-bit applications actually ran a little bit slower than they would have under Windows 3.1. That's because of the Windows on Windows emulation. It wasn't until the Pentium was really readily available that NT kind of came into its own. So if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. Drop a comment down below. And, as always, thanks for watching.